Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual worship. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you are a long-time member of this church or have found your way to our Zoom link for the first time this morning, we're glad you're here. Our church building is closed right now for safety's sake, but our church is alive and flourishing, and you are an important part of that. I'm Fran Manley, a retired UU minister and a member of the Worship Associates ministry team. And I am beyond pleased this morning to welcome our guest preacher, Dr. Janice Marie Johnson. Dr. Johnson is co-director of Ministries and Faith Development at the UUA. She supports, sustains, and advances multicultural, anti-oppressive, justice-centered, and innovative Unitarian Universalist lay and professional leadership and ministry for all ages. Dedicated to making multiculturalism real, Janice is excited about the UUA's commitment to dismantling white supremacy culture and building the beloved community. And in addition to all of that, she serves as a commissioned lay minister at the Community Church of New York in Manhattan. First, a couple of Zoom worship things. As you probably know, you can see and hear Janice and me, but we can't see or hear you, and you can't see or hear each other. But you can use the chat all through the service. Note, when you chat, make sure you're addressing not only the panelists, but also all of the attendees. After the service, you're invited to sign out of this call and sign into a new one for our virtual fellowship hour, where you can actually talk with each other. The Zoom link for that is in your weekly e-blast, and it will be on the last screen for this service. You can also use the chat for a few minutes after the service, but this webinar will end when the fellowship hour opens, about 5 minutes after the end of the postlude. If it takes a village to raise a child, it also takes a village to produce a virtual service like this one. Special thanks go to our tech team, John Petroselli, Justin DeClean, and Josh Disick, who is our tech this Sunday. Thanks as well to Karen Streech, who makes all the beautiful slides, Bobby Withrow, who keeps you posted in the chat as to what's going on, and all of our amazing music staff who enrich our service every Sunday. We do have a few announcements this morning. There are always announcements. The Justice Ministry team, in coordination with our January Share the Plate recipient, Home, is collecting socks for the benefit of Friends of the Night people. A member of the Justice team will be at the church from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. today and the remaining 3 Sundays of January to receive your donations. All donations will be welcomed and appreciated. Our stewardship drive for supporting the church during 2021 has been gradually creeping closer and closer to the goal, but we're not quite there yet. If you've not made your pledge of support for this year, it's not too late, and it's very easy to do. Just send an email with your name and pledge amount to stewardship@buffalouu.org. Or, if you prefer, mail a note to the office addressed to Donna Sense, giving the same information. Reverend Joan has been on vacation over the holidays and will be back on duty after January 15th, and will be preaching next Sunday. If you need to be in touch with her before that, the church staff knows how to reach her. And finally, even though our church building is not open, there is a lot going on and lots of opportunities to connect, to learn, and to serve. Check out our monthly newsletter and weekly e-blast for information on all the activities happening on our Zoom platforms. And if you're not receiving our newsletters, just contact the church office and you'll be added to the email list. And that's enough announcements. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. And let's worship.
May we recognize and abandon the familiar attitudes and practices that do not serve the whole. We are who we are, and we have the opportunity to be who we want to be, to create a new inheritance for the future. May our thoughts, words, and actions in our daily lives assist in dismantling paradigms of oppression and suffering. May we give thanks for our individual place in time and space, to our families and our relationships that touch and that change us. May we give thanks to the wise teachers who help us remember how to be and the chance to make it so. Underneath and within these stories and histories is our humanity. Being human means we are of this earth. We are these waters. We are fire and atmosphere. We are the sun and the moon and the stars. We are all that we see. And the wisdom is revealed by looking in between.
In Unitarian Universalist congregations all across the country, possibly right at this very moment, people are lighting chalices to mark the beginning of worship, the opening of sacred time and sacred space. So I invite you, if you have a chalice or a candle, to light it and to say with me the words for lighting our chalice. We gather in loving community, inspiring one another to transform ourselves to create a more just and compassionate world. And now, let's sing hymn number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Mr. Plumbean lived on a neat street where all the houses looked the same. He liked it that way, and so did everyone else. This is a neat street, they would say. And then, one day, A seagull flew over Mr. Plumbean's house and dropped orange paint right over his house. He will have to paint his house, his neighbor said. I will, said Mr. Plumbean, but he did nothing about it. The neighbors got tired of seeing that big orange spot. Someone said, Mr. Plumbean, please paint your house. Okay, said Mr. Plumbean. Well, then he got busy. He was painting, and when he finished, the roof was blue and the walls were white, but the big orange spot was still there. Then he added many other colors, pink, red, purple, and green. In the morning, the neighbors observed that Mr. Plumbean's house was different from every other house on the street. So much was added. The big orange spot was still there. The neighbors pretended not to notice, but they said to each other, Mr. Plumbean has popped his cork. Later that day, Mr. Plumbean brought carpenter's tools. He built a clock tower on top of his roof, and then he painted it. The next day they said, oh, Mr. Plumbean has lost his marbles. That very night, Mr. Plumbean planted palm trees, baobabs, frangipani, and more. And in the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. The neighbors then saw Mr. Plumbean swinging in his hammock, sipping lemonade between two palm trees. Again, the people pretended not to notice. Then they shouted, this used to be a neat street. Mr. Plumbean, what have you done to your house? Well, my house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams, Mr. Plumbean said. Well, the people had to do something. They asked Mr. Plumbean's neighbor to talk to him. Tell him that we all liked it here before he changed his house. Tell him that his house has to be the same as ours, so we can continue to have a neat street. Well, the neighbor went to see Mr. Plumbean that evening. They sat under the palm trees, drinking lemonade and talking all night long. Early the next morning, the man went out and bought lumber, rope, nails, and paint. When the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to Mr. Plumbean's jungle. What have you done to your house? They shouted at the neighbor. My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams, said the man who had always loved ships. Oh, he's just like Mr. Plumbean, the people said. He's got bees in his bonnet. One by one, they went to see Mr. Plumbean. Each person talked about their dreams. And the very next day, that person would set about changing their own house to fit their dreams. So whenever strangers came to Mr. Plumbean's street, they would say, oh, this is not a neat street. Then the people would say, our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we like to be, and it looks like all our dreams.
Each week, we take a good portion of our Sunday offering and give it away to an organization working for social justice in our community. This season, We're supporting the good work of a social justice organization that helps families have a choice in where they live. Housing Opportunities Made Equal, or HOME. This morning, we're pleased to welcome Daniel Corbett, Associate Director and Legal Counsel for HOME, to tell us about their good work.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Corbett, and I'm the Associate Director of Housing Opportunities Made Equal. I'd first like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo for selecting HOME as the Share the Plate recipient for the month of January. We deeply appreciate your support for HOME's mission and its work, but the truth is, HOME has greatly benefited from your support since its inception. In 1963, a member of your congregation, Attorney William Gardner, filed HOME's incorporation papers, and many of HOME's first meetings were held in the basement of your gorgeous house of worship, where we received a tremendous amount of support from your congregation. Anyone interested could become involved, and many did. One of those founders, Sally Metzger, described that sometimes there would be upwards of 500 people attending these early open meetings. Sally became a tester for HOME, working closely with another HOME founder, Liz Clark, who still actively supports HOME to this day. In addition to Liz and Sally, several members of your congregation have played pivotal roles in HOME's founding and subsequent work, including Dr. Carl Granger, Sam Walliger, Professor Marjorie Girth, and Jim and Debbie Dahlberg, to name just a few. We will always remember and deeply appreciate the support of your congregation and your dedication to HOME's mission to promote the value of diversity and ensure that all people have an equal opportunity to live in the housing and communities of their choice. In 2020, HOME's work in furtherance of that mission was more critical than perhaps at any time since the founding of our organization. The pandemic quickly translated into a housing crisis, as thousands of Western New Yorkers lost their incomes or faced other related hardships due to COVID-19. I think we can all recall the uncertainty and fear of those first few months of the pandemic, as the situation rapidly evolved and spiraled out of control. HOME responded by quickly disseminating facts and expert guidance on both the pandemic and subsequent relief efforts by federal, state, and local governments. We worked with tenants and landlords alike to ensure that everyone understood their rights and responsibilities in an effort to prevent, as much as possible, the harm caused when a family loses their home. And for those who needed to find alternate housing, HOME ramped up efforts to help them find a place to live that was safe, decent, and affordable. With funding through a grant from Enterprise Community Partners, HOME developed the Greater Buffalo Mobility Assistance Program, which provides comprehensive wraparound services to help participants relocate to quality housing in neighborhoods with access to critical resources essential for families to succeed and flourish. Unfortunately, many barriers remain that deny housing choice and limit opportunities. Housing discrimination remains a pervasive problem in our community. Last year, nearly 200 individuals and families came to HOME to report incidents of housing discrimination. In response, HOME conducted over 100 testing investigations to gather evidence of discriminatory conduct, and based on that evidence, filed nearly 24 complaints with government agencies or directly in court. Much work remains, however, and 2021 is a pivotal year for HOME and our entire community. We look forward in the new year to continuing to build upon our long, rich history working together towards our shared goals of equal opportunity and social justice. Thank you for your time and your support.
You can use PayPal by going to our website, www.buffalouu.org, and clicking on the blue donate button. Or you can send a check by mail to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo, 695 Elmwood Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14222. You can also arrange a regular automatic deposit with your bank. If yours is a gift to our Share the Plate ministry, please write share on the memo line, and it will be shared between home and the church operating budget. If yours is a welcome gift to our congregation, please write Pledge 2021 on the memo line. Either way, please write UUCB on the important line, and we will do the bookkeeping. By sharing our blessings, we bring hope to the world.
Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands. Abandon the poor, obscure what is holy. The reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of them can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless this world. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, its chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice, anestheticization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting that what is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage.
Let us join our hearts and minds now in a time of prayer, meditation, and reflection. It's winter now. The bright lights and jingle bells and glad songs of the holidays are fast fading into memory. And though the promised light returns a bit more day by day, the cold is with us, hard and strong, and there is still more dark than light. Even when a warm spell comes to tease us with its hint of spring, it's the cold that we believe. The white and silent world shrouded in snow seems more real and true than patches of bare ground speaking to us of another season. It's a time for turning inward, a time to feel the breath of our bodies flowing in and out in tune with the cold breath of winter. Breathing in, breathing out. As the wild wind moans and whistles in the trees and in the chimneys, breathing in, breathing out. Quiet now, like the earth under a blanket of snow. Not doing now, content to be, to wait, to rest, to gather strength for the time to come. Breathing in, breathing out. To all that is chaotic in us, let silence come. Let there be a stilling of the voices that have laid their claim on us, that have made their home in us, that go with us even to the holy places, but will not let us rest, will not let us hear our life with wholeness or feel the grace that fashioned us. Breathing in, breathing out. Let there be an opening into the quiet that lies beneath the chaos, where we find the peace we did not think possible and see what shimmers within the storm. Breathing in, breathing out. Going deep, like seeds waiting patiently for sun to warm the earth and awaken the life sleeping within them. like hidden bulbs of crocus and daffodil, even now reaching downward into the dark, like the roots of the bare branched trees deep down below the frost, deep down in the warm and fertile darkness. Breathing in, breathing out, holding on and being held, safe against the howling of the storm. We especially hold in our hearts this day the family and friends of Ellie Lawson, who passed away on January 1st. There will be a memorial service later when we can gather together again. We also hold in our hearts Dave Batt and his family. Dave's father passed away just before Christmas at the age of 100. And in happier news, we celebrate today with Ren and Maya Martin, who both had birthdays this week. Ren turned 17. Can you believe that? Ren turned 17 and Maya turned 21. And now I invite you to fill our chat with the names of loved ones suffering in sorrow or celebrating in joy. Each name a breath, each breath a prayer. breath of nature is upon us. The spirit of life is within us. The community of love is among us. So be it. Blessed be. And let the church say, Amen.
I'm delighted and honored to be with you today, albeit virtually, in your spectacular sanctuary. We start off by offering my deep thanks to Reverend Fran Manley, Dr. Danielle Bassin, your musicians, Miss Karen Streech, and your tech team. Mahatma Gandhi reminds us that there is a force in the universe which, if we permit it, will flow through us and produce miraculous results. This force, I believe, allows us to live into our radiance. We radiate love when we open our hearts to ourselves, to other people, and to life itself, while being responsible for our choices, honoring care and self-care, and living into righteous indignation. It requires a measure of trust in the unknown, as well as faith, hope, and love. It demands that we delve into the vicissitudes of our lives. Last year, we experienced tenuous times that defied my imagination. Already in these early days of the new year, we have been tested beyond the brink of comprehension. For me, the euphoria of last Tuesday's great news regarding Georgia was tempered by the unfathomable desecration of life, spirit, and space at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Dr. Deborah Rebel asserts that when we emanate love, we ascend to our highest level of soul potential. We perform better at work, we're more creative, healthier, and we impact our environment in a positive way. So your current theme of imagination resonates deeply within me. And I like to think that I bring a sense of imagination to all that I do and to all that I am. Yet I realize that the imagination that spurred me on as a child was tempered as I grew up. As a child, I had imaginary friends. So did Hope, my twin sister. We'd have tea parties in imaginary gardens filled with beautiful flora. We'd engage in our own twin speak language. And we cherished our imaginary sanctuaries. As we grew up, we imagined different careers for ourselves, and we were blessed to bring them into being. I remember a time job hunting. One day I came home dejected, having been told that I was just not hireable. My resume was too scattered. At the time, my mom, a neurologist, consoled me, telling me how much she appreciated my expansive creativity and imagination. She loved being a doctor, but she shared that in some measure, she regretted that her career life had always been narrowly focused, probably from the day she was born. She wanted to be a doctor. Speaking about imagination, let's return to the big orange spot. What's the story here? Without question, Mr. Plumbean creatively challenges the notion of conformity, the notion of a neat street. By repainting his house to reflect his heartfelt dreams, he breaks away from the status quo. How often do we act in the all-knowing change? Why change? We've always done it this way mode. The neighbors are at first appalled that he's breaking away from his community. I want to assert, we, that's the royal we do that too, don't we? Culture change takes time. We want visitors, but we want visitors who frankly are not too different than we are. Because residing in the cradle of comfort matters greatly to us. Although mindful of needed reparations, we say Black Lives Matter instead of saying all lives matter. Mr. Plumbean is a catalyst for change. His actions liberate his whole street. So now I ask you, who are your Mr. Plumbeans within and outside of the walls of your hallowed sanctuary? Who are they? When Mr. Plumbean's neighbors asked him to paint his house, he agrees, and he does so, but he does so on his own terms. That's excellent. And yet, life needs balance. We must be careful when challenging the societal standards and norms that are central to the community. As we well know, perhaps especially these days, it is not always better to act according to one's own wishes. We need to know that when appropriate boundaries of exercising freedom of expression are severely stretched, they become at times inappropriate and at other times treasonous. Eventually, Mr. Plumbean's neighbors celebrate their respective individuality by appreciating each other's choices to be themselves as individuals, to paint their houses as they wish. The Prindle Institute for Ethics in Greencastle, Indiana, notes that issues of conformity versus individuality were explored by philosophers steeped in the existentialist tradition. They believe that the pressure to conform to social norms had undermined the ability of people to develop their own unique abilities and personalities. For the existentialists, becoming an individual was the most important thing for a person to do. That children's story, The Big Orange Spot, allows children to explore critical issues such as these. Creativity has always been great, a useful tool. But what excites me today is a notion of imagination, your theme for this month. Imagination is the foundation on which creativity rests. The writer and scientist Drew Dennis reminds us that creativity is the act of creating something in the real world, while imagination deals with unreal thoughts that are free from the very confines of reality. So in addition to my wonderful and real job at the Unitarian Universalist Association, I have the privilege of being in a volunteer program of the New York Department of Education. A few times each year, I go into New York City's most disenfranchised schools, and I relish the role that I play, that of principal for a day. Instilling a sense of hope, of possibility into a child is for me a sacred act. I come in, I introduce myself to the classroom, overwhelmingly full of Black and brown children, and I say, I'm Dr. Janice. What do you want to guess about me? And we have fun. The fun really begins. Invariably, they guess that I am African from the motherland. They guess that I must be a medical doctor. They assume that I sing beautifully and that I love Prince and Bey. They never guess that I am a well-traveled Jamaican, that I love theater and opera, that I collect art from the African diaspora, that I speak fluent German and French. What do I want for those children? I want to follow Mr. Plumbee's lead and teach them to crack their imaginings wide open and soar. They deserve no less. I see their radiance alongside their acceptance of a story of them being products of their environment. These children deserve good schools with caring educators who can envision them thriving. They deserve daily sessions in meditation, in the arts. They deserve to have well-appointed libraries. And I have to say, this is not the common experience of our Unitarian Universalist religious education students, wherever they might be located. And that's why Mr. Plumbean matters. That's why the Mr. Plumbeans of the world matter. They encourage us to live our lives and our faith as though each and every child and adult is free to dream, to build the world we dream about, to engage in bold, beloved conversations that strengthen our resolve and make us better than we were before. I believe that one of our moral mandates is to use our imaginations to create more equitable communities for all, for all. Love has the power to change minds and hearts. At our best, we are filled with the all-affirming, loving kindness that our fragile world aches for. When I think of the UUA's Side with Love program that comes out of my office, I know that we make a difference. In this emboldened season, I am excited about working at the UUA as an employee and as a leader. It's exciting to be here now. Over the past few years, we have been deeply engaged in a phenomenal iterative process to articulate who we are and who we wish to become. Make no mistake, the work is hard. It is slow. The anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multicultural work we do within and outside of our association in order to combat white supremacy, this is no small thing. We may not have many roadmaps for the work ahead, but we certainly have resources to help us move in the right direction, all the while knowing that we are not going it alone. We have partners with whom we collaborate. Some of you know of a critical report, Widening the Circle of Concern, the report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, published last June by the UUA. It analyzes structural and systemic racism and white supremacy culture within Unitarian Universalism. And it makes recommendations to advance long-term cultural and institutional change that redeems the essential promise and the essential ideals of Unitarian Universalism. It calls us to find creative ways to center our aspirations and to make them real. It calls us to engage in the lifelong commitment to fill and to be filled with loving kindness. Can you imagine how radically wonderful our faith lives could be if we, each and every one of us, dared to choose to bless the world? And perhaps to do so by carrying forth the recommendations of the Commission? I believe that we can do this in our fierce and fragile world. To ensure our collective inheritance, we must combat today's devastating political and revolutionary climate. We must get into good trouble, siding with love to combat the isms and to harness love's power to stop oppression in its many forms. How do we live with the ordinary and the extraordinary side by side? As we look around at the state of our world today, my sense is that our eyes and our hearts fill to the brim with tears, whether figurative or literal. We grit our teeth, we try to hold them back. It is hard not to shed tears, tears mixed with grief, fear, and bewilderness, salty tears. And yet when those tears have subsided, when they've dried as they always do, they leave tracks that are filled with the resolve that demands that we, like those before us, move forward. Imagination invites us to define ourselves as our natural resources. Imagination encourages us to be storytellers with the power to change narratives that speak to the very ground of our being. And in order to do so, we must ask ourselves challenging questions. We must stay at the table until we have answers, answers that we will commit to. Answers that demand our very privileged breath. Breath is a privilege. Answers that demand that we live into our radiance as we say yes to life, yes to truth, and yes to love. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Ashe. And Masakan. Now, let us join in singing hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
As we bring our service to a close, let us say together the words for extinguishing our chalice. As we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may we carry its light with us into the world in the power of peace, faith, justice, and love.
May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always.